Hello, everyone. Welcome to McNally Robinson here in Saskatoon on Treaty 6 territory and homeland of the Métis people. I'm Mark Turner, the Executive Director of the Saskatoon Symphony Orchestra. And my guest tonight, Shah. Welcome to Music Talk.
Thank you.
You're our conductor this week with the orchestra for our concert this weekend, A Visit to Vienna. This is your first time conducting the SSO.
Yes.
You were booked originally to conduct the opening concert of the season when we were supposed to have Isabelle Bayrakdarian here, and then, of course, the pandemic changed plans. But we're thrilled to have you on the podium. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, that's a difficult question. I am, I guess, excited musician in this world. Born into a musician's family, married to a musician.
So your life's a bit musical.
So it's a bit musical. Okay, here you go. Yes, my dad is a conductor, and my mom is a leading teacher in back home where I'm from in Uzbekistan, and yeah, I've been into this since I was 6 years old.
There you go. So and now, right now, during the pandemic, you've been calling Saskatoon home because of family. But normally, like you often conduct down in I want to say Kansas.
Kansas City, yes.
Oh, good, I got it right. I knew it was one of the K's.
One of the K's.
Yeah, there you go. In Kansas City. Have you been back to? You haven't been. Is this your first concert back in the pandemic?
Yes, actually. Yeah.
Okay, so what is it like? You had a rehearsal with the orchestra, the strings last night. What is it like being back conducting in the new normal? As for people at home, everything is spaced. So normally string players are quite cuddled up together because they share a stand. Nobody's sharing a stand. Everybody's spaced apart. You're in masks. They're in masks. What's it like?
Better than I actually thought. I've been watching concerts online, and everything is in a long distance, and it seems challenging. And of course, there are some challenges, but it's for the best. For the everybody's safe and healthy, and we have the opportunity to make music even from a distance. Obviously, speaking through the mask was, conductor does speak all the time during the rehearsals.
Well, and speak, but you also, every conductor I've ever had the privilege to watch, you emote so much on your face.
Exactly.
So that has to be challenging because all of a sudden you're only available from the bridge of the nose up.
So orchestra musicians had to guess if I'm smiling or not. Here you go. But I was smiling most of the time. So no, you cannot show your emotions through your face, and I do tend to sing time to time a few things. But we had a really good time, and I had to speak back of the orchestra a little bit again because of the distance. But other than that, I think new normal is new normal, and we get used to it.
Yeah. Was it emotional being, I mean, it'll be even more, I suspect, emotional in the concert because it's one of those moments of it's been so long since making music was a regular activity. We've found, not only the musicians, the staff, we've found that each concert is a big emotional experience because it's so weird to have been not doing it for so long.
Absolutely. I think it was Karen that we were talking about this. Like, I almost forgot that I was a musician because all of a sudden I cannot practice my profession. My last concert was end of February, actually. 1 week after that, pandemic started. So since then, I haven't been in front of the orchestra. So it felt like first time, actually. I was honestly a little bit nervous because, I forgot how it feels. And
but I assume it's like riding a bicycle.
It's like riding a bicycle. So, once you start, then I remember how it goes, and it was emotional, true, it's like all of a sudden we're making music again, and orchestra has been making music, but for me it was like after almost seven months coming back to it, and then making the first.
And some of the musicians, this will be their first performance back too, because we've been rotating musicians in, so we're trying to get everybody employed throughout the year, and so as each concert, some of the musicians have been, the principals particularly have performed already, but others haven't. So it's been kind of new each and every time for us, which is strange. Usually by November doesn't feel new.
Doesn't
No,
feel new,
it feels
yes.
like work, but by it's still feeling new right now. This weekend is a lot of fun because, every single concert this whole season of our 90th season, our reimagined year, is about musical travel. And we're trying to, take people on journeys, on little tourist trips, musical destinations. And so this weekend is a visit to Vienna. It's almost impossible to have imagined a year where we didn't go to Vienna musically as an orchestra, because it is the city of music after all. And so when I first reached out to you and said, okay, we're moving ahead, we're going to do this, let's do a Vienna concert. It sort of all came around the Haydn cello concerto, because we had the one of the great things, like yourself being here during the pandemic, we have a number of musicians who are here, came home to be with family for the pandemic, and Alexa Mitzik is home and normally down in Chicago, often plays with the orchestras down there, and reached out to him and said, what concerto might you have that would fit a smaller orchestra, because we can't have, the full size? And he instantly came back with Haydn C, and that was the moment that we went, okay, Vienna, here we come.
Here we come, yes.
Let's talk about the cello concerto. It's Haydn's first.
It is.
It's, he was so instrumental to classical music, to music. He father of the symphony and father of the string quartet and all of those things. His concertos are tough.
They are, and one is better than other. Actually, the following D is little later and mature Haydn. You can see it in his writing. Actually, this first one is absolute masterpiece, and that already shows how Haydn achieved his mastery already at such a young age. This is actually written around same time when his symphony number 6, 7, 8, and he has over 100 symphonies, right? So you can see it's at the beginning of his career, yet he is already a master composer, and it is safe to say it's quasi-Baroque ritornello feeling to it, and so is his symphonies written in that style. So it's early Haydn, but it's early master Haydn, which changed along the way. He lived a long life and successful one, and his style changed. So this is the peak of his first style.
Yeah,
so
and with this, I mean the like you say, it's his earlier styles, because he's still very young in his career, but so idiomatically written for the cello, which fascinates me, because was he a cello player?
No, he wasn't a cello player. I can tell you this. He was a viola player.
Exactly.
Like
just
I
like
am.
yourself. Yeah.
So actually him and Mozart, for fun, they were close friends, right? They played viola. Both of them played the viola, and that's why we have viola quintets, because they both played the violas with their friends. But back to cello concerto, he wrote it for his friend, who was the principal cellist of the Prince Esterhazy orchestra that Haydn led. And then, as I was telling you earlier, the mystery around this concerto, because it was lost and it was rediscovered 1961 in Prague library. So until then, it was forgotten. So then the question came if it is truly a Haydn work. But there is enough evidence today, and then they found his handwritten jot down ideas, and then here you go. Now it's proven it's his work, but it's so idiomatic. That's what the mystery is, why people thought that most likely it's not Haydn. But him being a master composer and a very good viola player himself, that shows that he understood the instrument so well. That's why it's so idiomatic, and all cello players just love it.
Yeah, and cello players love it because it is so well written for their instrument. It's meatier than a lot of the cello stuff that was from that time period.
Exactly.
There's more meatier. What's the word? There's more substance than you would expect, A, from a composer that early in their career, but also B, from that time period.
There is only one concerto that stands at the same level. You can imagine, there's so much work already was written for cello, but in terms of cello concerto, there's only one work that is in that level, and as that well played now is the CPE Bach. It's one of Bach's sons, right? And that is also sort of an influence on Haydn. Yeah, and Haydn got influence. Well, Mozart called CPE Bach as he's the father and we're the children, right? So there's only that concerto. Other than that, from that period, Haydn concerto is the pick of this medium.
You got to work through the concerto the other day with Alexa.
It was Alexa.
In the acoustic. It's a beautiful acoustic we get to enjoy at St. John's this year. So we're very grateful for them to letting us call it home for the year. What's Alexa going to bring to this piece? I mean, it's interesting because there are so many ways for a cellist to actually kind of give this their own stamp, whether it's playing it very historically informed, giving it a little bit more of a romantic tinge. What should we expect?
Alexa is actually, it was very interesting to hear him play. I love observing the soloists, when they play and when we get to know each other, and I didn't know him, and it was quite a discovery and such a pleasant time we had together that Friday when we met. And one of the things that, and I've conducted this piece a few times now, but the cadenza he's playing it's quite a virtuoso cadenza that I wasn't familiar with. So that's one thing to look for, and his sound is absolutely beautiful, and especially in the second movement you can feel that intimacy in the sound. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and that second movement, I mean, the first is such a burst of energy. That second movement is so is so Haydn in its elegance, and yet it's still got quite a lot of emotion in it for the time period.
It absolutely does. Yes,
it's a phenomenal work of art. I'm really thrilled we get to do it. It's actually, we organizationally we have a wish list of music we'd like to play at some point, and the Haydn has sat there for a few years. So this was a good timing for it. The concert opens with as you said, it's a mystery. This whole concert's a bit of there's some mystery to it all. The concert opens with a Symphonia in C by Mariana Martinez. Now, Martinez is not a composer that people today really know a lot about, but they should, frankly, because she held her own in the Vienna of Haydn and Mozart. Mozart wrote piano duet sonatas so that he could play with Mariana.
With Mariana,
and Haydn was her piano teacher and her collaborative pianist. She was an exceptional singer. She conducted, she composed. She didn't work for the court. She was the original independent woman.
Self-sufficient. Yes,
yeah, she really was exceptional. She was in Vienna via Naples via Spain. Her father was a Spanish dignitary to the papal nuncia in Vienna, and Haydn actually lived upstairs in her childhood home.
Yeah, and he was a teacher, keyboard teacher for her.
It's crazy when you see all those connections.
Yeah.
So the Sinfonia, as far as we know, this is definitely the first performance in Saskatchewan. It might be the first performance in Canada. I'm gonna have to make a call to my colleagues across the country. The reason I say that is because the publisher said to me, "We've never shipped this to Canada before." So that's usually a good sign. It wasn't the easiest thing in the world to get shipped, so we're glad we got it here. And shipping in the time of COVID is also quite an experience. Let's talk about this Sinfonia. She called it her overture. It's in 3 movements. I'm not even entirely certain if they were written as originally as a 3-movement work, or whether they were 3 separate pieces put together.
No, it seems like, and as you said, first time, right? It's the first time for me too. Thanks to you that I got to know this composer, and absolutely charming work. At that time, Symphonia and Overture were interchangeable, obviously, right? They were all sort of intro work, introduction to something bigger that was supposed to happen. And there's no a lot of information, not a lot of scholarly work on it, and that's the opportunity for music historians to spend more time studying her. Is it looks like it must have been written as a introduction work, since it's about 30 minutes long, to something bigger, and it might very well be intro to her bigger pieces that she wrote. And then she was a fabulous singer and studied with a fabulous Italian singer, Porpora, yes. And she's really well known for her cantatas and vocal work. So it must have been written for that, but there is not enough evidence of it, or no record showing that it was performed specifically as a standalone piece. So, but as it is, it's an amazingly charming work and a perfect concert opener.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I years and years ago, I first heard of Martinez's work because I got to play one of her piano sonatas by accident. The music was in a collection my family had, so I played it. But it was actually Kendra Harder. We had local composer Kendra Harder this fall hosted Musical Herstory, the class that we offered online this fall, and one of the composers Kendra dug into was the life of Mariana Martinez, and it was that moment that sparked when the Haydn cello concerto fell into place. That was the moment I went, oh wait, let's do a Martinez. We always try to do something that showcases a voice that's been silenced or been kept out of the canon. And Mariana, I mean, her music is so exceptional. It's really a shame that classical music has ignored it for as long as we have.
Yeah, it is. It's truly, and this opportunity that I got now will help me advocate for her music in the future. I've done continuously over these years, advocated for women composers, and I've done enough women composer projects, but now she will be in one of the next.
I know it made me look at it and go, okay, well, we've got to do one of her cantatas. She's got such incredible cantata works.
She does.
And it's funny. I was reading about her a couple of weeks ago and thinking, like, I remember 7-8 years ago when Canadian soprano Barbara Hannigan started conducting the orchestra and singing while conducting. I remember how like monumental that was for the classical music industry, because it was like, holy mackerels. And then reading about Mariana, I mean, she did that hundreds of years ago, and forgotten now, and forgotten. And the fact that she was so close to Haydn, so close to Mozart, the fact that she was forgotten really does show that the classical music industry has done a serious disservice to her.
Absolutely, agreed.
Yeah. What can people expect in the piece? I was listening to it. I was thinking anyone who likes Haydn's music, who likes Mozart's music, will instantly love her music. You can tell that she wrote and existed in the time of those two in Vienna, in such an important period of musical history.
As I said, that it's absolutely charming work, but it's also a masterful work. It is not, I would say, like the late Haydn serious, heavy symphonic work. Yet it has the moments that are absolutely like transcending. Like second movement is absolutely gorgeous, as we just spoke about the cello concerto, so the second movement of the symphonia is very beautiful, and incidentally she includes two flutes only for that movement, and for reason, because it gives that tenderness and such a
completely different texture.
Absolutely. So first movement is in sonata form as any symphonic work at that time, and then later on, and the third movement is in a dance meter 3/8, which always has been sort of in overture works that kind of introduced the bigger works. So that's another reason why there is assumption that most likely it was an introductory work for something bigger.
Yeah, it's a really incredible piece of music. I'm really thrilled that we get to do it. I'm even more thrilled actually that we get to film it, because not only is it available through the live stream this weekend and then later released on the concert film, but we are able to then to release this recording onto YouTube. I mean, there aren't a lot of recordings of her music, particularly of this work. I could only really find one recording of this work. There's a couple of live performances on YouTube, but so little of her stuff is out there.
That's true. That's true, unfortunately, and it's a shame, as you said. This composer, absolutely not because she's only a female composer, but as a composer, she needs a bigger attention.
Big time, big time. For those of you watching at home, you can add your questions and comments into the chat. We've got someone managing the live chat, so they actually send them to me here. So we'll get to questions at the end of the show tonight. So. The big piece, the full meal deal on this show is one of the great works. It's this, we're doing a reduction, but it is really one of the great orchestral works that is also a mystery.
It's also a mystery. Here you go. And, as you know, the title is Haydn Variations.
Yeah.
Now it's called St. Anthony Variations. And the mystery around this is that Haydn wrote Divertimento. It's one of his divertimentos for wind ensemble, and the second movement features that an amazing piece of music, short but absolutely amazing, St. Anthony Chorale, which Brahms took as it is in its entirety and orchestration, except the serpent he substituted with contrabassoon, but the theme when he introduced in his piece, so the piece is called Haydn Variations by Johannes Brahms. So he introduced the St. Anthony Chorale at the beginning as a theme, and then writes
in its entirety.
And then he does what Brahms does best.
He does what Brahms does best. Yeah.
Yes.
When we were thinking about Vienna, there's all sorts of ways for us to go. I mean, there's of course the early Viennese school, the second Viennese school. I like actually that we went with Brahms. Not from a quote unquote distinct period of Vienna. It wasn't one of those schools, but he was Vienna. He had such a big figure there in the Romantic period, and like you say, this kind of showcased what he could do. He was the guy who was in love with the past, but had the brain of a future thinker.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of works. I mean, Haydn was as well. We don't necessarily think of him as that, but he was obsessed with moving the art form forward. And Brahms, I mean, we see that in this. It's his ability to take something so complete and turn it upside down.
Upside down, absolutely. And as you mentioned, forward thinking, right? We associate Brahms, and many music historians associate Brahms with conservative thinking and a conservative composer. Meanwhile, Wagner was, creating this and so on. But another connection to what you just said in terms of first Viennese school and second Viennese school is Schoenberg has a big writing on Brahms the Progressive, right? Which Schoenberg is a representation of new era and the second Viennese school, while Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven is first Viennese school. So Brahms stands in the middle. So it's a connection, it's a bridge between these two. And he takes the idea and then makes it absolutely, transforms it to a absolute Brahmsian celebration of music, especially the finale, where he again takes the ideas from back, like the last movement of these variations is built on figured bass, which is Passacaglia, right? That he again used at the end of his career in his fourth symphony, last symphony. and so on. And he takes few stylistic ideas from Bach, and he quotes Haydn himself in the last moment. So here you go. Brahms does the best is what he does. You know, he takes the music and transforms it, and it's absolute lush sound, Brahmsian sound that comes out in this work. And again, this is Brahms' early work. This happened before he wrote his first symphony that took him 19 years, you know. So he kind of practiced out all his techniques to his maximum in this piece, actually. And then he announced himself as a symphonic composer, writing his first symphony.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. I mean, the original work was done for is it two pianos or piano two pianos
Two pianos,
and which is a phenomenal work in and of itself and should be played more often. I appeal to my piano playing colleagues. We need to do it more. But then what he does for such a like you say, he hadn't written his first symphony yet.
Yeah.
He had been sitting on doing that, waiting on doing that. This is such an incredible moment and a kind of a transformative moment, because this is, I think, the first like orchestral variations.
It is truly, you know, it seems like there is one piece by Salieri, and then there's another obscure composer, which unfortunately in the Amadeus movie was depicted as a murderer, which is not true.
Not true at all. No.
He was a master composer.
He was not that interesting. No.
But yes, Brahms's Haydn variations are the first of its kind. Right. Of symphonic variations.
When you approach, so we are doing a reduction because we have a smaller orchestra available to us during the pandemic because of social distancing rules, and the string players are all 2 meters apart. The winds are 4 meters from them,
yes.
And the winds are surrounded by plexiglass screens and air filter UV filtration systems. So we're doing a reduction. What do you approach a piece differently when it's a reduction?
Absolutely. You know, when I saw this score for the first time, you know, incidentally, this actual piece in its original form was the last piece I conducted this year before the pandemic in Texas. So it's vivid in my memory, and through the summer, actually, it's not finished yet, but almost, as that I orchestrated for wind orchestra. I just thought that, you know, it in its own idea, it was originally written for wind, so it would be fantastic work for wind orchestra. So then we spoke about it, and then you mentioned that there is such reduction. It's a very good reduction, and sounds as close as possible to its original, and that's what I love about, you know, there are lots of reductions or lots of arrangements of original pieces that do not sound as it is, you know, and it diminishes the magnificence of the work. So this one stays true to its identity, and of course, due to the situation, COVID situation, we cannot have the full orchestra. So this was the best substitute for it.
Yeah, and I know, because we've already talked about this, you made a couple of adjustments to bring back some of the original that had been lost, and the biggest actually is that there's timpani.
There's yeah, in this original, in this arrangement there is no timpani, but
which just seems crazy.
It seems crazy, yes, and few other things seem crazy in the reduction, but luckily musicians are, you know, excited and they're up for, you know, trying things. So we are borrowing few things from the original score and inserting into this reduction.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're making our own reduction in a way, you know.
Exactly. And we're moving the timpani in tomorrow. It's our first chance to have the timpani back this fall, so we're pretty excited about that. They're in both this concert and our concert in 2 weeks' time, so it's a lot of fun. You've been to Vienna?
I've been to Vienna only once.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
yes.
It's such an incredible city.
It is.
They call it the City of Dreams because, of course, of all of its connection to that art movement of the Second Viennese School and the philosophy, psychology,
Of course.
Freud, all of that.
Yeah.
Did you have coffee while you were in Vienna? I mean, Brahms was a serious coffee drinker.
He was a serious coffee drinker, and I spent quite a bit of time in cafes. So,
And bars. He was also a frequenter of bars.
It's free. Okay. But it looks like coffee drinking and sitting in a cafe doesn't happen only in Paris. It happens in Vienna too. So and
they're quite particular about their coffee.
Absolutely.
They have a whole language. Like you can't order a coffee. They sort of look at you funny.
Yeah.
And so it's fascinating that they have this whole culture, coffee culture.
Coffee culture, yes. Well, as the anecdote goes, a friend sees him and so, how's it going? Yeah, I'm working on the work. And so by the end of the day, so what did you write today? So, one note. And then next day it's like I removed that note. That shows how Brahms was very careful with all of his work.
He really was. He was. It wasn't just the neat and tidiness. It was that he was so cautious. He didn't want to. Yeah, I often, even in his piano music, I think often like it's almost like he was working with stone and didn't want to wreck the stone.
Exactly.
So
Perfectionist.
Yeah.
Perfectionist. Yes.
Yeah. And it comes through, and it's such a sweeping work. It does kind of capture that energy of Vienna, like you say. It was that middle ground between the first school and the second school, but so much was happening in that city, and music means so much to them, even to this day in Vienna.
Absolutely. If it is music, then it has to happen in Vienna. It has to happen in Austria, and it has to be Austrian. Well, all the composers that. Of that time and later, thought and seek their, career to be in. If you want to make it, then you have to go to Vienna. Here you go. So
and a lot of people still feel that way today. It's one of the 5 big cities you got to make it in.
You got to make it in. Absolutely.
Filming is a whole new thing for our world. This is now our 4th filmed live streamed concert. We had actually a friend of mine asked the last time. Well, it's not actually live streamed. Oh yes, it is.
Yes,
it is. Yeah, it really is.
Oh no,
that's we experienced it very live. Trust me. I know you're a huge fan of Herbert von Karajan, who was one of the great conductors of the 20th century. The reason we kind of experience filmed concerts the way we do is because of Karajan.
Absolutely. He is the master that introduced a new century of broadcasting. That's why there is a famous documentary movie, Conductor for the Camera, right? It's about. It's not the most complimenting documentary, however. It justifies why Karajan took to such extent why filming has to be in certain way. He even hired Clouseau, who was a famous movie director that produced the 20th century's most impressive works. And today people don't. Almost have forgotten that, the way we see in the camera, like the angles, like how conductor looks, how orchestra musicians look, it's thanks to Karajan, who spent hours and hours in front of cameras practicing and rehearsing, and then afterwards watching and analyzing and choosing which cameras best represented the live music. So it's thanks to Karajan again.
Yeah, he understood that it was a different medium than sitting in a concert hall, and that's what came across, and that is, like you say, that is how we plan, particularly shots of conductors. I think every live stream, every concert film ever has had that shot of a conductor from one of those angles that Karajan made his own.
Yes, absolutely.
Unlike anything that classical music lovers had seen before that.
Absolutely. And Karajan, we should thank him for so many developments of how it should sound through the camera, how to capture the live music in the compact disc, that people actually don't know that, Karajan was a absolute tech junkie in a way, and they were great friends with Mr. Sony, that is the Sony Corporation. And today, as we know, CD, the way it is thanks to Karajan, because he said that Beethoven Symphony Number 9 in its entirety has to fit into CD. That's why the size was determined that way. So Karajan, besides being a visionary conductor and an absolute genius musician, he's also, you can call him in so many different ways. He's a visionary man, a visionary person that introduced so many new mediums into the new era.
Right. When you're not prepping for a concert, what music do you listen to?
I listen to all kind of good music. I'm not kind of person, I only listen to classical music. I listen to very good pop music. For example, Celine Dion is one of my absolute favorites since my teenager years, when I first time discovered for myself. She's an amazing musician, and you can learn so much from her singing and how she presents the music. And I listen to rap as well, surprising.
I do too.
So people get, oh, can you really listen to rap? Yes, I do. There is a good one and there's a bad one, and there is a bad classical music too. So any good music, good artwork is interesting for me to discover. Maybe I don't know a lot, and I'm sure I don't know a lot, but I listen across genres.
What's a passion project within classical music for you? Like what's a project that you really want to champion or cling to? Anything special?
I've been thinking about it. This is a very, very good question, because I'm hoping in next decade I can dedicate my time for it. My country is my hometown, actually, Tashkent, is almost 3,000 years old. Almost 3,000 years old. And as any...
Even older than Saskatoon.
Even older than Saskatoon, as you noticed, yes. So there is so much music. The classical music, not the Western classical music, but classical music of Uzbekistan goes back to that time. As human beings, as we know by studying history, is that singing is the first music making, and then came the percussion instruments, so on. So there is a long tradition of classical Uzbek music, but there is also a long tradition, now it's about 150 years old, long tradition of Western classical music in Uzbekistan. And a lot of it is, of course, due to Uzbekistan being part of Soviet Union for a long time, and all our composers studying with such composers like Shostakovich, Prokofiev, that visited Tashkent so many times, and my godfather, my dad's close friend, Tolkun Kurbanov, whose music I really want to champion and introduce to Western world, is my passion project. And I do want to, and I jot down some ideas, I'm starting to gather more information. I do want to write a book and release a series of recordings of these composers from Central Asia, not only Uzbekistan, but neighboring countries in Central Asia, that have so much to offer to the world that world doesn't know yet. Yeah,
it's pretty fascinating, actually. And one of the things, I grew up in the Royal Conservatory system here in Canada, and as someone who studied all my years of history with the RCM, not once did they tell me that classical music actually started farther east than Europe, and that it came to Europe through the silk trade, the coffee trades, the travel that began to come into Europe. What my very Western European whitewashed version of classical music history is that it started in Italy and Germany, and thank God it did. to start to dig into the real and true history of music. I mean, it dates back so far back
So far back,
beyond
yes.
the Renaissance period, which is sort of where, I mean, and even in those RCM music history, you learn about Gregorian chant sort of being
The
beginning.
beginning, yes.
Well,
yeah.
no.
Well, if 11th century is the beginning, then, we're missing out some more from there, one thing that is not mentioned in history books, not only music history, but in history books in general, is that all that Greeks that we admire and we look up to as the beginning of high thinking and philosophical thinking, politics, and so on, including arts, is saved due to Arabs, or a few to mention, which are my countrymen that. If you knew that Globus, that as we know today, was developed, the first version of Globus was developed by Biruni, who is known as a Persian scientist who came out from Fergana Valley, which is my mom from, and Al-Khwarizmi is the father of algorithm, which is the Anglican version of Al-Khwarizmi, right? So mathematician. Khwarezm is part of modern Uzbekistan, So these philosophers, they traveled west from where Central Asia is now to Persia and Khorasan, and they studied not only in their own language, which was either Persian or Arabic, but Greek. They were so fluent in Greek and Latin. So they've translated the original works from Greek and Latin to Arabic and Persian. And all these years of wars, all these libraries were destroyed. And then everything that today's understanding of what Greeks thought were translated back from Arabic and Persian to original language, to Greek, and before it became like widely known today.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating to take a look at what we simply accept as truths about origin stories, and then to really look and see. I mean, classical music as we know it, art music or complex music, has belonged to the globe since the beginning of time.
Of course.
Does being as you mentioned, you're a viola player. Does being a string player yourself inform how you work the orchestra?
Oh, absolutely. And yesterday, it seems like I surprised the string players, is that I said I generally tend to not intervene with what concertmaster has in mind for the orchestra, for the group. I'm a new person to this orchestra. I come in for this week. And I might have some ideas, but I also respect what this orchestra has been doing already for years together, and their own understanding of how they want to make this music work. So unless it's totally out of style or out of what I was thinking it should sound like, then I might intervene or suggest something. But in general, I like to take what the orchestra offers first, and then finding the medium that we both will be satisfied with. So I do have full understanding of how strings work, and I do have quite a good understanding of how winds work, because all these years I've taken flute, horn, oboe, bassoon lessons to have, like a professional look at how these players approach their music, and conductor gets to say something in front of other people, and so to speak, conductor is a teacher that teaches the orchestra how to phrase or play or this thing. And if conductor doesn't know what he's talking about, that's a bad poet, you know. So to avoid that from the very beginning on, early on, I understood that since I'm a string player, I need to learn wind instruments and percussion. So I took lessons. So I believe I have some understanding.
Even on the double reeds.
Even on the double
Well
reeds,
done you.
that's a harder one actually.
Oboes and the bassoons
Oboes
are
or bassoons.
definitely and I mean honestly, horn. In the orchestral world, we refer to it as the horn. Most people call it the French horn. Outside of orchestras, horn is also
A very difficult
gracious.
instrument.
It's hard to play. That little tiny mouthpiece with so much pressure. One of the other questions we had come in: Is there a time in your life that you realized that your path was music?
I think I was in music from the very beginning because my parents were musicians and my dad being a conductor, he actually did not encourage me to start conducting. You know, I started conducting very late.
Most musicians don't want their children to be musicians.
Musicians, well, kind of understandable, right? But also being being into my dad's and my mom's rehearsals, and then seeing in our house so many musicians coming through, you know. Of like every colleague of my dad or every project, he guest conductors, guest soloists, guest musicians, they would all come through our house because my dad invited my dad run one of the oldest orchestras in Uzbekistan. He is retired now, but conductors never retire, right. You know. He still guest conducts.
Fade away.
They fade away, yes. So I was in music from the very beginning, so I guess I never had a thought that I will not be a musician. Only later on, I second guessed if I had enough talents to be in it, but I guess
that's natural. I think any one of us who've ever decided I want to be a musician had that moment of, oh my God, I can't do this.
I can do more serious you are, more you start doubting that can you do it or not. You know, that the definition of PhD that you actually don't know anything, right? So. Because you start understanding deeply what it takes and what it is to be in that thing, you know.
This is kind of a double-barreled question. This weekend is our first time performing this fall that will not have an in-person audience. So we made the decision last week. I emailed you to say we met as a staff virtually and decided that it was our chance to slow the spread of the virus by removing the audience from the equation. We've had 3 incredibly safe concerts. I've been really grateful that our audience has given such strong feedback about how safe they felt, and I've been so thrilled to have all the audience who took all the precautions very seriously. They were all pre-screened before they were allowed to even come to the show. They were all in masks, hand sanitizer, spaced. You know, there was all these things that made concerts tricky. We decided, for our own comfort level at the SSO, we were going to go without an in-person audience this week, which means everyone is watching from home. We're really thrilled and so grateful to our patrons who have been so good about that, who you know, we're all itching to get back to regular live concerts, but this is a really great way to do it. And we will have a very tiny audience in the hall this weekend. Immediate family members from some of our musicians are going to come, just so we have some applause in the room. It can be hard to play to a very dry room without applause. Have you played to a room without an audience before for a concert like this?
No, this will be the
No, it's
first
very
time.
weird, isn't it?
It's very weird.
Yeah, so we're hoping that we'll cheer from the sidelines from the control station of the live stream. We'll cheer loudly too, or clap. We can't cheer. No one's allowed to cheer, just claps. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see.
It will be interesting, yes.
Yeah, to see, but we're thrilled that everybody can join us online. The last few concerts we've had, I think, over 1,000 households per concert watching from home, and from like across Saskatchewan, across Canada, North America, and the world. I know there's a ticket this weekend for someone in Holland, so it's pretty nice. Incredible to see what all of this new technology can do. Do you think this is the next new path for classical music?
Absolutely, and we've been moving that direction already. So, sort of, COVID presented that opportunity that the future is such that we will be
and
broadcasting everything.
broadcasting and allow. I mean, what I find fascinating is people are watching it multiple times.
Yeah.
We had people who were coming to the live shows who would watch it again the next day, or it's a very different way to think of their engagement with a concert, and I think that's exciting for those of us in the industry.
It is.
It gives a completely new perspective to what we do, how we do it. We're also in the process of planning. 2 weeks from now, we have our first Christmas concert. We do have 2 Christmas live streams coming on December 5th. It's a night at the North Pole with everything is upbeat and a lot of fun. And then the following weekend is a candlelight Christmas on the 12th. Which is the more classical, more reverent,
traditional,
Bach and Handel and that sort of stuff. And it's pretty cool actually to think about people being able to enjoy some Christmas music this holiday season, because there isn't that tradition available to us right now of going to concerts. And we're thrilled to have conductor Bill Rowson home for those. Bill, of course, grew up here in Saskatoon, and we're thrilled to have him back for those concerts. He was coming home originally anyway for Messiah, and so this was a great way to work that all in. And so it's a pretty fun experience to be doing this safely, cautiously. We're taking a lot of precautions, and still trying to create something.
Absolutely. And kudos to you that persevered in terms of, it is needed for the community. We need something joyful to offer, and in a safe way.
Yep.
And having everybody's safety in mind. So,
thank you so much for being here, Shah.
Thank you for having me.
I think we're all through the questions too. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I really appreciate it. I'm hoping some of you are also watching this ahead of the concert on Saturday night. A huge shout out to our friends here at McNally Robinson. This Christmas season is going to be really hard for companies, businesses here in Saskatoon, across the world. I highly recommend considering that you buy all your gifts at a place like McNally Robinson, because right now this is such a great way to support your community. And trust me, walking through here today, there's gifts for every single person you could ever imagine on your gift list. So a huge thanks to them. Have a great night, Saskatoon.
Thank you. That was fun. It just gonna happen. You're really good at leading.